Live on the Hangout. Say hi, Jay.
Woo! Hi. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Jay.
Good night, John Boy. So for those of you who missed last week...
The proper reference is from earlier in television and radio history. It's
Yes.
Good Night, Gracie.
Gracie Ellen.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And she had, it was so great. She had on the set, if you opened up the closet, there were all these hats in the closet because she always got people who came over so frustrated. That was the whole joke, the running gag, that she got people frustrated they left without their hat. So they left their hats there.
Rick, you need your lower third up.
Oh, my lower third.
And not only that, and you missed last week when Heather spent about 20 minutes defending Wayne and Schuster as comic geniuses.
It wasn't 20 minutes. 5 minutes.
It's the comedy of hyperbole.
Thanks.
Thank you, Doug.
There we go.
I don't hear it.
I don't. Now I hear it now. It's already coming up.
And welcome to the Political Fix on this Wednesday, September the 24th. We are now into the fall season. No more summertime, no more hot weather. Well, that's not exactly true. Anyway, I'm Heather Vale, and I'm here with my co-hosts Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz. Jay is a strategic planner who helps his clients create and implement plans, goals, tactics, and benchmarks. He's also the bridge in Nevada for Israeli companies who want to expand their business in the U.S., and he has development labs that create smartphone apps and inventions. Rick Raddatz is a serial entrepreneur and internet marketer with a degree in philosophy. His political development's called The Solution, and that solution is to cap and prioritize government spending, as you will find out more about on this show. I'm Heather Vale, also known as The Unwrapper. I'm a journalist, interviewer, and all-around media personality. So, welcome to this show, guys. Hey, Jay, how's your week been?
Summer is not over.
You said last week the summer of Jay. No more summer.
I retract that comment. I'm never letting it end. I'm having too good a time.
It's a non-ending summer.
It's non-ending. Endless summer.
Endless summer. Okay,
yes.
I think that was a song at one point.
It was a movie.
A movie and a song.
Yeah.
I think.
From the movie.
The summer of Jay sounds very uplifting and wow, you know. The fall of Jay sounds like a good
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the fall of Jay.
Yeah.
The autumn of Jay.
Yeah.
Okay, but that
sounds like you're dying slowly.
Yes. Exactly.
I said the September of my years.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Let's just let it go until it's winter, and then it can be the winter of Jay.
Yeah.
That's even worse. Oh Jesus. Now I know why bears hibernate.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jay's going to start hibernating this year. This will be fun. Okay.
Yeah. See what happens.
All right, but Rick's had a really interesting week. So you weren't here last week, Rick. You were on a secret mission in Washington, and so we'd love to find out what happened on that secret mission.
Yeah, so I went to Washington, D.C., spent a week in training in political activism, and then I had a couple meetings set up as well with some people you've seen on TV, and I met one of them by accident, actually, in a coffee shop. It was kind of funny that I hadn't planned, but that's what happens in Washington D.C. when you're, to squeeze the proximity together there. But yeah, it was a very, very good week, and we have a new member of our leadership committee, if you want to call it that, in the movement. We have a full-time D.C. rep who's on board because she believes in the mission. She is a graduate student at GMU, George Mason University, and she's been struggling in some of her classes, thinking, boy, there's got to be a better way to structure government action. And if competition is the answer in the free market, isn't there some kind of parallel in government action and some way of adding competition into the mix? And so she, on her own, was already on the verge of discovering cap and prioritize. And so when she heard about it, just kind of by accident, she was in the same room as I was talking to other people, and she just got it instantly. And so she is on board. She'll be representing us in meetings in D.C. and I'm also reaching out to the academic community at GMU and elsewhere. So that alone is a big development. But I also met with the objectivist people, and I can tell you those stories if you want. And I met with some other political action figures that I can't talk about.
And somehow, in the midst of all that, you managed to get a new couch, a new big screen TV, and a new webcam.
Yeah, I'm very efficient. I have a new webcam, so hopefully the quality is better.
It is better. It's noticeably better. Yeah.
The reason for the big screen is that Gauntlet.com just launched, and I'm a big Gauntlet fan. I'm dating myself back in the '80s, but so now the whole family is using this big screen here to play Gauntlet together, and it's a blast.
I have no idea what Gauntlet is.
Gauntlet is a video game where you get 4 different players at the same time running around this little dungeon killing everything you see.
Okay. Jay, are you familiar with this?
I not really.
Okay.
I'm not a game guy.
Rick's not exactly dating himself. He's genre-sizing himself.
Is that what it is?
We're all the same age. Come on, we're all the same age.
No, I mean, I'm from the Space Invaders era, when it comes to games. So, I mean, what do you want from me? At the time, it was high tech.
What about Pac-Man?
That was for women like Pac-Man.
No, Ms. Pac-Man was for women. That's why they made a Ms. Pac-Man.
You say so. We liked guys like things where you could shoot.
Donkey Kong?
Or race a car. I didn't like Donkey Kong.
Mario Brothers?
No, I didn't like any of that crap.
Oh.
I like games where you could shoot something.
Okay, well that's what Rick's talking about. So why didn't you do Gauntlet?
I don't.
Oh, you didn't have any
game
friends. You didn't have any friends to play with. I get it. You need 4 people.
What's the top story?
Okay, well, first of all, we need to find... Let's have Rick define the solution for people that are listening and not quite sure what we're talking about when we say cap and prioritize.
Hang on one second.
Okay.
Okay, so the cap and prioritize, to put it really simply, is where we step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is to cap government spending to make it sustainable at least. Okay, I think we can all agree on that, left and right. But politically, that's hard. It's hard to make that happen. So to make it politically viable and sustainable, we need a step 2. Step 2 is to take the money that's left, trillions of dollars, and find a way to actually have Congress or other levels of government prioritize that money. In other words, rank it from top to bottom, so the most important stuff is on top, and the waste, fraud, and abuse is exposed on the bottom. And by prioritizing, reprioritizing over the years, as hard as it might be, that's what's going to force government to care about results and constantly improve its ability to help the people who need help most. And so if you add it all together, we end up with the idea that achieves the political right goal of limited government, in fact, one that even constantly shrinks as a percentage of our economy, and yet also achieves the political left goal of constantly improving the government's ability to help those who need help most, in other words, social justice.
Okay. Sounds good. So, Jay asked for the top story. There's 2 options for a top story. We can have a second story today if we want. Now, one of them is a farther-reaching story, but I'm going to go with the old journalistic standby, if it bleeds, it leads, and that's going to be our top story, our first top story of the day. From Birmingham, Alabama, a man fired a day earlier from UPS killed 2 co-workers and then himself yesterday. He was able to evade security by wearing a work uniform and entered through a truck dock in the rear of the building. The two former UPS co-workers were shot dead within minutes yesterday, and the shooter, identified by police as Kerry Joe Tesney, was found dead on top of his gun from what police called a self-inflicted wound. He entered after about 80 drivers had left for the day to deliver packages from the Birmingham Center. Authorities haven't released the slain people's names, but they say that they were members of management. 45-year-old Tesney of the Birmingham suburb Trussville is described as having been troubled over his work and financial situation. He and his wife have 2 children, and the family has been active members of their local church for over 10 years. The church held a prayer service last night for the Tesney family and the slain workers. The UPS warehouse is in an industrial area just north of the Birmingham airport, and its parking lot is surrounded by barbed wire. Tesney opened fire either in or near some offices inside the warehouse. One body was found outside one of the offices, and the other 2 were inside an office. Tesney's firing was finalized on Monday when he got his final notice in the mail. Besides his job with UPS, Tesney and his wife Melissa were distributors for Advocare, a multi-level marketing company that sells health and fitness products. They have a website that advertises the business and says, just tell us your needs, your dreams, your desires, and we'll make it happen. Now, Jefferson County courts showed that a Birmingham business sued Tesney and UPS in 2010, claiming that he had wrongly picked up a $4,000 radiator for shipment, either intentionally or by mistake. That lawsuit went on for years before a judge ruled in favor of Tesney and the shipping company a year ago. Exactly. September 23rd, 2013. Now, it's not clear at this point whether that lawsuit may have played a role in his firing, but that's what we know, and that's the top story. Thoughts, Jay?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's a huge and horrifying tragedy. But the thing that sticks out with me actually is the lawsuit over a radiator that lasted for years.
A $4,000 radiator, yeah, and it went on for years. Yeah.
No, someone gives the radiator back. $4,000. That's insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
That is a waste and a misuse of our judicial system to drag it on for some guy. How much did he spend in the time? You know, yeah. I don't know. And unfortunately that lessens the blow of the tragedy of him. Of murdering 2 people and then killing himself when he had a wife and children, which is that's a whole separate issue. But the thing again that sticks out with me is this radiator. I mean, I don't know. I'm a little baffled by it, quite frankly. But why?
Yeah, and the thing is, UPS. Like I have dealt with UPS, and they have broken packages and stuff, and they're always willing to pay for the mistake. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, this. But again, forget that. Forget on the UPS end of it. At what point does some judge say, this is ridiculous and a waste of my time?
After 3 years. After 3 years.
How about
apparently?
How about after the first time you walk into the courtroom? I'm not going to, I mean, $4,000 for a radiator. Where's the radiator? Get it back to him, and then let's call it a day. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem that complicated to me.
I agree. I agree. It's not that complicated.
And again, I mean, we can talk about the tragedy of him, you know, murdering 2 co-workers and then himself and committing suicide. But I mean, I don't know how to make, you know, any kind of sense out of it.
Yeah.
You know, so
that
I'm at a loss for.
This is a type of story we've seen before, where I mean, they've made a term called going postal. I mean,
right. Well, because it was post office workers, right? That's right.
Right. UPS, post. I mean, okay, they're shipping companies. There's not that huge difference. What I'm baffled by is why this tends to happen in that industry, or is it just that those are only the stories that we hear about?
To be honest, I don't know a lot about that industry. I mean, well, the post office and UPS are 2 very different things, and we don't really hear that.
Yes, however, they both deliver.
And again, it hasn't happened for a very, very long time in the post office, as far as I know. Okay. And it was sort of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It was like a thing at one point in time. But it hasn't happened in a while. I have no idea what it is, and
yeah, lately it's been
okay.
school shootings that have been more prevalent.
Yeah.
But either way, it comes down to someone who feels oppressed or depressed, one or the other or both, and suddenly snaps. You know, they take out their anger in an uncontrollable way.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that in itself it's sad that it happens, and it always impacts more than just them when it does happen, which is the worst part of it.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, he left behind a wife and children who were having financial problems.
Who knows who the management who got killed? Who knows who they left behind as well?
Well, right. Yeah, I mean, we can say it was incredibly selfish of him. I just don't think that does it justice. I just can't wrap my head around that. I don't understand it, and again, to tie it into Cap Prioritize, other than to say once Cap Prioritize is in place, the economy gets better for all. There's been a lot of talk about inequality and the income gap and everything like that, and Cap Prioritize will address that to an extent, and hopefully lessen the amount of times things like this happen. But
yeah, well, I'd like to get
I'm at a loss.
I'd like to get Rick's opinion on that, but let's take a quick break first, and we'll be right back on the Political Fix. Speaking freely.
Yeah.
Speaking freely.
I put my Hangout on mute and then yelled for my son to get off the internet so we could have a higher quality audio connection here. I forgot my phone was not on mute, so sorry for that.
No, we didn't hear anything.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you didn't hear it? Okay.
No, because the Hangout volume is down.
This microphone does have noise cancellation, and I did take it off my head, so it must have picked it up on the other microphone that it uses, and it canceled itself out. So that actually worked.
Cool.
Because I yelled really loud. But, okay. Good. No harm, no foul.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Did you hear this story? Okay.
And I will tie it into political philosophy and Cap and Prioritize, although you're going to make me do cartwheels again.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I sort of did it.
Yeah, I know.
Let me see what you do.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Sorta. All you did is the blanket. Life will magically be much better.
I didn't say
Abracadabra.
magically.
Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
The bibbidi bobbidi
cannot
boo
win today.
theory of government.
Cannot win today, yes. Christ's sake.
Okay.
It is such a...
All right, we're ready to go back whenever.
Yes, go back.
Back. Please.
Welcome back to the Political Fix. I'm Heather Vale, and I'm here with Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz, my co-hosts. Before the break, we were talking about the top story, which was a UPS man in Birmingham, Alabama, going postal on his co-workers and killing 2 people from management. Now, Jay was tying that into Cap and Prioritize, and I said I would like to hear Rick's opinion on that, so let's hear it, Rick.
Yeah, there really is 2 ways to connect it into Cap and Prioritize. One is what Jay said, which is Cap and Prioritize is kind of an advancement in societal organization, and so we should expect, a continued trend towards a better society in general. But there's also another way to connect it, which is to say that this is why we need government in the first place. We have to have some sort of society that's organized and has the power to fund a police force and the military and so on, because crazy people like this exist in the world. And it's a tragedy, yes, but it's a very predictable one. We can predict that this will happen again. We can predict that in a society without a police force and a lot of the infrastructure we have in terms of capitalism and productivity and therefore prosperity in general, it'd be even worse. Like if you want to go view the extreme, go live in Somalia or Afghanistan for a while, and then you'll be wanting to live in a more organized society. So, but here's where it gets into cap and prioritize. Once we all agree that we need to have some sort of government that's powerful enough to monopolize the use of force, both within a country and also against other countries, then, or in protection of against other countries, then we're going to have positions of political power that are incredibly powerful, that have to be filled. And if we let people just take those positions of power, that's bad. So we have to have elections to make politicians compete for that power. But if we're going to have that, we need to have voting. And that means the voters, the people, can start voting themselves property through government action. And that's where we have the left-right conflict. And so this is all part of an actual, very logical, and actually pretty simple logical progression that leads inevitably to the next step, which is to incentivize voters to vote for more mature government, which is, in this case, prioritized, where the left gets the pursuit of social justice thanks to the prioritizing, and the right gets the limited government they want thanks to the cap. And it's that combination that respects both sides that is going to make it politically viable and sustainable, and that's where we end up with a mature country. So it actually connects in that it proves, it kind of begins this logical chain.
Okay, so are you saying people that are anti-government, for example, libertarians, are also anti-police?
Well, there's a lot of different types of libertarians. There are some libertarians that are so far out there, they call themselves anarcho-capitalists because they believe in very, very little government. Some even believe in no government because they believe that any government is the use of force, and that use of force in that way is simply wrong. And maybe in some imaginary ideal world, they're correct. And even if you want to try to move that direction, there's a question of how. You know, you got to start where we are. And so that's where the pragmatic libertarians come in, where the pragmatic libertarians say, okay, yeah, we want to aim towards a more and more free society, but we have to go in steps. We have to start with where we are and get there. And so libertarians are famous for fighting each other more than they fight everyone else, because they're all competing to be kind of either the most pure or the most realistic within the libertarian camp, and those two forces conflict. They think. What they don't realize is that cap and prioritize is the transition plan from the mess we have now towards a more and more mature society, one that can handle more and more limited government. And in other words, it's a way of earning our way to reduce government. We have to make government better so that we can make it smaller. It may be counterintuitive to some people, but if you think about it, the better the libertarians get at telling people and showing people how good limited government can be, the more limited government you can have. And so libertarians have got to start talking about how prioritizing spending can make government really good. And it's the only way that they're going to get that cap that they want.
Okay, see, we have seen what happens when there's no government, when there's no lawmakers, when there's no police, when there's no one in control, when there's no leadership. I mean, we've seen stories like Lord of the Flies. We know it'll collapse into anarchy. We know that this is not going to be good. So how can they sit there and say, yeah, let's just let everyone run wild, and somehow that's going to be a solution?
Well, because they're not thinking completely is the problem. They it's a very common in politics where someone imagines some better future and then they want to help make it happen. And in the case of communism, for example, communists have this ideal image, this ideal end in mind, where we are all sharing so effectively with each other that we don't need a government for that reason. Okay, good luck. In order to do that, you have to educate and mold the citizen in terms of their private actions so completely that greed and selfishness are just not a concern anymore, and that's not going to happen. Libertarians make the exact opposite mistake. They believe they have to educate and shape voters so completely that they vote for truly limited government. Not going to happen. It's the same. It leads to two very different visions of government. And yet what Cap and Prioritize says is that as long as we take a pragmatic approach, we can march toward both aims at the same time, slowly. And the idea here is this. If we cap government so that the amount of taxes we need to pay constantly shrink, but we maintain the purchasing power of government by constantly prioritizing, we're finding better ways of using that constant purchasing power. So now we're helping people better than ever before, even though taxes are shrinking. If you keep that trend line out towards the future, you arrive at a point where taxes are so low, like 0.01% of the economy, and government is so good through competition at really helping people that government itself becomes the best charity in town and can be voluntarily funded. In other words, we can reach a point, at least theoretically, where we mature into a point where we are free because government is so limited, but also free because we are sharing so well. So I don't know how far down, but I know the way to get there is by this combination, this dual approach of cap and prioritize. And I spoke with several anarcho-capitalists over the week, okay, and some of them get it and some of them don't, but that's the way life works.
Yeah. Okay. So Jay, did you have anything to add to Rick's taking your thoughts and adding to it?
No, I mean it's other than it it just reinforces one of the things that I've been talking about lo these many weeks, that that when you get out so far on the fringe, you get so loony, that you're not dealing in reality, weird fantasy of yes, to quote Winston Churchill, he said, "Democracy is the worst form of government, besides all those other kinds," which means we need something. It's just that's just the the nature. Lord of the Flies, which is fiction. I think Golding was onto something there. Of what would happen. Should there be no government? You could look no further than the Wild West, less than 100 years into our country. You can also look to, now there's places in, I think like Wyoming and Montana where there's government, but and there's police and everything like that. But these people live so far out in the hinterlands that, God forbid something happens, the police can't get to them in time, so they're left to defend for themselves. But it's, I don't think that's an ideal situation. So, there has to be, if the role of government is to protect the citizens, they should be protecting them no matter how far out they live. And it's because they haven't prioritized. It's because they're doing other things.
Right. Well, they can't protect them no matter how far out they live because they can't pay for the police force to. If people choose
because they haven't prioritized.
Okay, but if people choose to live in the middle of nowhere because they like their privacy, the police force isn't going to put more police on the force just to police them in case something happens. I mean, that's their choice to live out there.
No, but the government then also shouldn't make it illegal for them to be able to protect themselves.
It's not. It's in your Constitution. The right to bear arms is in your Constitution.
Some of these guys have complaints. I mean, I don't want to get into a gun control discussion, but they don't. A lot of them feel that they cannot legally have the weaponry they need. I'm not talking about an RPG or a half track or a Sherman tank or something. They want a semi-automatic weapon.
Oh.
To protect themselves on their ranch in the middle of the night.
Stop the presses.
We're getting off the rails.
I have a pet peeve here.
Okay.
The right to bear arms has nothing to do with the right to protect yourself against another individual. That's a side effect. The purpose of this right, and Jay agrees with me on this, the reason they have this right is to protect ourselves against the government. Okay. And all the other kind of stuff comes in there. we need it so that the government, so the wrong guy doesn't take over government because of charisma. And suddenly it's easy for them to just take over society because nobody can defend themselves. So
that's right.
It might seem like a far-fetched thing, but we always want to keep that right there just so that there's no question.
It's not so far-fetched. Because we've seen a couple examples of it. We've seen, that was the first thing Adolf Hitler did, was take away people's...
Okay, well, it's far-fetched to say that we need it against the government rather than we need it against the guy who's breaking down the front door trying to rob us. So.
Yeah. But, well, we're talking about original intent.
Yeah.
The original intent was not to protect ourselves. It was not self-defense. It was not the right to defend our property, to defend our family, to defend ourselves.
It was so the citizens could defend themselves against if a tyrannical government took over. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
Why. It was keep in mind it was a different time. There were no tanks.
Yes,
there was
right.
No Air
so time
Force,
has
there was
evolved. Time has evolved. I mean, there's rules around what constitutes arms that you can have and how you can use it and how big your knife can be and all this kind of stuff, what kind of gun you can have. Like, there's rules around this stuff because times have changed. It's no longer just about government.
You know what? Back in the day, okay, when our country was founded, I seriously doubt, I don't know this for sure, but I seriously doubt that there was even an issue about people having guns for personal protection and hunting because they probably had to hunt to actually get food. Okay.
Yeah.
And so really, my guess is that the only real question they were debating and trying to ensure by having this right in the Bill of Rights is the government versus the people kind of issue. Now, fast forward 200 years, times are good. Most people don't have to hunt for their butter, or whatever they want, parquet, and so we are now so far removed from the hardship that our forefathers had to deal with, that I think it can seem far-fetched that you need rights to have a gun to protect against the government, because it just generations and upon generations of people have now grown up and died thinking that we've solved it. We're living good now. I don't have that concern. I can keep my door unlocked even. I remember my grandmother talking about that, how in Knox, Indiana, at first everyone keeping their doors unlocked and everyone knew each other and all that, and then over time the welfare state came along and everyone's cheating the system, and Knox is now one big welfare state, Knox, Indiana. But the point is, even though it's far-fetched from our current daily lives, it's still necessary from the larger perspective of making sure our government stays in line.
Yeah, and again, that was the original debate. The debate was we don't need to put that in there, and the people who were proponents of it were saying, yeah, because at some point in time, some guy may come along and try to screw with things. Which is the same reason why they put freedom of speech in there. They said, well, we know that. This is why our country was founded. We don't need to write it down. And then the guy said, yes, we do. We absolutely do, because somebody's going to screw with this if we don't put it down right now. They didn't say screw with this, but they were much more eloquent than I am.
Got it. Okay. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have Jay Amernick's segment, Inside Perspective. So we'll be right back with you on the Political Fix.
Speaking freely. Woo! I buy that.
No, I have not heard that, but I'm sure it's BS.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. The people, because doesn't the vaccine sort of give you the virus in a very weak state so you can defeat it? Isn't that the idea?
Yeah, but also the flu viruses morph so much that by the time the vaccination is out, its last year's strain, and the virus has already morphed, so the flu vaccine is very rarely seen as effective. Well, I don't know which flu, but my kid had the flu 2 weeks ago, and he is not vaccinated. So.
Well, you can still get it.
Well, he's saying that there hasn't been a case, so I have a case.
Your son said that?
That's what Doug just said. Yeah.
No, your son said that's what I was saying.
No.
I know. I'm kidding. It's that Canadian sense of humor.
Okay.
The evil flu.
Okay, he didn't have that. It was just the flu.
He didn't have the evil flu?
Yeah, okay. All right. We can come back whenever.
Yeah, come out.
I just wanted to put a quick break there. Welcome back to The Political Fix. I'm Heather Vale here with Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz, my co-hosts. Before the break, we were discussing the cap and prioritize solution that Rick has in many different incarnations. That was quite the discussion that went in many ways, including the right to bear arms. But now we're going to change course. We're going to go into the inside of government with a segment that we call Inside Perspective with Jay Amernick. Jay has experience working within the government confines, and so he can tell us what exactly happens from the inside. So go ahead, Jay, with Inside Perspective.
Thank you very much. This week, it is simply this. We're going to talk about broken campaign promises. And don't worry, Rick, I'm going to tie it in. Don't worry, you're going to be very happy. There's a saying
that I disagree with you, but we'll see. We'll see.
We'll just wait till next week. And I was going to do a different one, but I did this one because... No, God.
It's the fall of Jay.
It is. It's over.
The fall of Jay.
It's like it's coming apart at the seams already. Look, so there is a saying in Washington, and it is, where you stand depends on where you sit. And that has to do with your office, your committees, things like that. So we'll use the President of the United States as the example because they're the ones that do the big grandiose campaign promises and then inevitably don't fulfill them or outright break them once they're in office. And that is because when they start off, they're not privy to everything that the President of the United States knows. So they may make a comment. I'll use our most recent example. President or then Senator Obama, when he was running, said, "I'm going to close down Guantanamo Bay." That was very popular. He gets into office. The first thing that happens is he gets into a meeting with the national security advisors and the whole security team, and they say A, B, and C. This is what's going on. The president then goes, "Oh my God, we cannot close down Guantanamo for whatever reason because of whatever new information he has that we, the public, do not have." So that is why campaign promises get broken. That was not my. That was just the example I want to use. But I want to talk about two pieces to where it's pertinent to CMP, and that is one, the key to getting this implemented is to first seek to understand and then be understood, which is actually one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. But you want to know where your member of Congress is coming from before you launch into a litany of why CNP is good, because you may be barking up the wrong tree unless you've contoured your case to appeal to them. So that's A, and then B is, once in place, there will be government obviously will be smaller and there'll be less need for outrageous and grandiose campaign promises.
Okay.
But the key is, again, when looking at a member of Congress or or president, vice president, it's where you stand depends on where you sit in Washington.
Okay. Rick, do you disagree?
Well, I agree as far as Jay went, but I would, I guess, add one more element into the mix that I think is more dominant in regards to campaign promises, and that is simply that we want politicians to pander to us. And we want that because the opposite is horrible. Having a politician so powerful that we pander to them, is not what we want. We want politicians to pander to us, and so. The whole point of elections, especially to limited check and balance positions of power and free speech along with it, the whole point of all that is to give politicians the incentive to pander to us aggressively. And actually, we do it so well now that it's in a sense it's too much, because pandering isn't always wise. You can pander to people and get their votes and promise them all this kind of stuff, and they'll go, yeah, and they may already know that they can't deliver it. It's all a game. It's all a political game. Yeah. And I'm sure Jay agrees. Yeah. So I would just say that it's more than just the information they know. That kind of assumes that they're actually trying to do the right thing when they make a campaign promise. I think that almost all of them are playing games. They're speaking the truth that their side knows, and so I totally agree with where you stand is where you sit. But the way to change that, and as Jay did mention, I agree with this absolutely, is that camp and prioritize is a limit on what politicians can actually do, and it's so limiting because a cap is a limit and another limit on government, so it's like a double limit. These new limits are so restrictive in some sense that they can't do anything but the best stuff. Okay, which is what will make the left happy in time, as they understand it. So that's the whole idea.
Right. Well, and also to add like another layer onto it, if once it's in place, and then obviously a rising tide lifts all boats, things will be better for all people. So if some guy comes along and tries to bring it back and just goes free puppies for everybody if I'm elected, the people who would normally be into that are going to say, well, wait a minute, I can get my own puppy. I don't need you. I don't want a government puppy. I want my own. Well, and they won't buy into it. That's an example. It's a widget. A puppy is a widget.
Well, let's be even more specific. A politician who wanted to promise free puppies, in the context of cap and prioritize, would have to say that we're going to cancel the free kitty cat program.
Yes.
No, they would have to say there's only 100 puppies available, and then they're marketing. It's like, and then we're dealing with scarcity.
This is actually a very important. We're using kind of a funny example here, but it's a very important incentive distinction, because if in an uncapped, unprioritized, good, I want puppies, okay, or to make it more realistic, I want to help the homeless. That's a good thing. I want to help the homeless. And under cap and prioritize, they'll have to say, well, wait a minute, we have 15 programs to help the homeless, and based on results, 13 of them or whatever aren't working, and here are the one or two that are working, and so let's deprioritize those couple things and change those couple things, and then extra fund those things that are working right now. And you see how big of a difference that is, where camp and prioritize gives politicians the political cover that they need to actually govern. Okay, that's the difference between uncapped, unprioritized government and capped and prioritized government, is actually the cover they need to actually do what truly is wise.
Yes, gets us out of the silly season.
Yeah.
Okay, so in Jay's example, it would be, I don't want the government helping the homeless myself and go volunteer at a soup kitchen.
It could be that. Yeah.
Well, no. But the problem is, here's how it works now. To use Rick's example, there are 14 programs, 13 of them aren't working. So the other 13 come back and say, "Oh, it's because you didn't give us enough money," and they find some willing ear in Washington to say, "Oh, okay, of course, let's more money and let's raise taxes." That's the vicious cycle everything's in now. That needs to stop, because clearly these are things that no matter how much money you throw at them, aren't going to work. And then to go back to what Rick said earlier about government getting smaller, and he said it seems counterintuitive. It actually seems quite intuitive. It's working smarter, not harder. It makes it a lean, mean fighting machine.
Spend less, spend better, spend less, spend better. Cap and prioritize.
Yes.
All right.
Tastes great, less filling.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
You can have both.
Apparently. Okay. So, on that note, we're going to take another very quick break. When we come back, we're going to hear Rick's rant. This is the highlight of the show. Can't wait to hear it. Right back with you on the Political Fix.
I need to slip off for just a second.
Okay. Slipping. Jay is slipping. Speaking freely.
Yeah, I'm showing my bare arms.
Yawning
I
freely.
have the right.
I have the right to bear arms, too. So I was just Googling something in the middle of that, and it seems like...
I knew you weren't actually listening to me.
No, it seems like now they're saying that, like, regardless of how it started, which they do not say, but without guns, people would be unable to protect themselves from criminals, blah, blah, blah. So it's no longer, it's morphed. That's, like, that's the impression I get from everything I've read, so.
Yep. No, I agree. The whole debate has shifted, and it luckily the Supreme Court doesn't. They still try to tie all their arguments back to the Constitution and the understanding of the original intent, even the left and right. They have to kind of tie it back in, so it doesn't vary too much from that. The public debate is often very different than the Supreme Court debate. Actually, sometimes the Supreme Court debate's even crazier because lawyers are desperate and they do all these cartwheels and stuff. But
okay. All right, we're ready to come back, Doug. Welcome back to the Political Fix. I'm Heather Vale, here with my co-hosts Jay Amernick and Rick Raddatz. And before the break, we were talking about government puppies and why people don't want government puppies. They want their own puppies. Which became not the puppy metaphor, but became about the homeless to make more sense. Yeah. So, but during the break, we were actually talking, Rick and I were talking about, and if you were on the Hangout, you would have seen this, but if you're not on the Hangout, you wouldn't have heard this. We were just talking about how the right to bear arms has morphed over time. So even though originally the intent might have been government, Rick admitted that that is not necessarily the intent now, correct?
Well, in the public debate, I believe at the Supreme Court level, they are still largely connected to the Constitution, although not perfectly.
Okay, got it. All right, so this is the highlight of the show. This is where we have some fun because we get to hear Rick rant. Not that he doesn't rant through the whole show. I mean, let's face it, he's a ranter. He does rant repeatedly. But this is the segment that we actually call Rick's rant, and we affectionately call it outside perspective because, as opposed to Jay's inside perspective, Rick has never worked in government. He just has an outsider view on how things should work. So let's have Rick's rant.
Okay, but actually, before we do Rick's rant, someone proposed a new name for our movement, or at least maybe one campaign that we might do in the movement. And I wanted to get you guys' impromptu thoughts. This is the first time you guys have heard this new name.
It is.
So live on the Hangout on the show. The idea was to focus on the prioritize part of Captain Prioritize because that's where all the new messages is and so on. And so the proposed name is Organize to Prioritize.
Okay.
Organize to Prioritize. So that would be the movement, and we would show how the right wants to prioritize to make spending politically viable. The left wants to prioritize in order to pursue social justice, and so we can define it in terms of everyone's needs. But the movement as a whole is a little bit less political, but organizing to have government prioritize spending instead of pretend to.
I think that will have a really big appeal to the OCD segment of our population for sure.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
probably moms campaign as well.
Moms?
Yeah, moms like to organize and prioritize their household. So
Yeah.
That's what we talked about before.
Well, the organize here isn't so much like tidying up the room.
I know, but that's the impression. When I hear
know.
that, that's the impression that I get. Organize
Really?
to prioritize.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think about organizing people into a movement. I think about organizing all this stuff around my desk.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Okay.
But it
Joe, what do you
does
think?
but it does need to be. But it's the same thing though. Once you've organized your desk, it is a more efficient device.
That's
so
true.
Once the movement is organized, it becomes a more efficient instrument.
Yes, but
Correct?
do you want to explain all that? I mean, we're looking for a 10-second elevator pitch here, not a big long explanation.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, it's
okay,
cute.
well,
It's cute. I do like it. It's cute.
Okay, so it sounds like you guys aren't like incredibly for it, or against it. It's just kind of.
I'm not always a fan of rhyming.
Oh really?
So that's just me. Yeah, but that's just me.
I rhyme all the time.
What?
I rhyme all the time.
I like rhyming. I'm a big fan of Dr. Seuss. Yeah, I like to rhyme.
Yeah, but Dr. Seuss couldn't come up with a rhyme. He made up a word.
Yes.
Slizzledorf?
He was cheating.
That's not a word.
Yeah. Dr. Seuss cheated. He's a cheater. He's a rhyming cheater.
Yes, and sometimes his rhymes did not rhyme. Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so.
However.
Thank you for that little diversion. We'll go now to Rick's rant. My rant today.
Okay.
My rant today is about these philosophical individualists. I ran into one this week in Washington, D.C. This is a person who, I won't name any names, but this person believes that only individuals exist, only individuals take action, and so the collective doesn't even exist. It's a phantom. You can't even think about it as a collective. It's just, the improper use of force. It's one of these kind of arguments. And so this is just a huge break from reality. And this is a smart guy. This is a really, really smart guy. But it turns out he's an economist. And economists like to look at how individuals make decisions. And so some economists like to look at how government makes decisions at the individual level. And I think that kind of study is perfectly fine. But if you take that kind of training and you take it too far, and you think that, because only individuals make decisions in a way that I like economics, that doesn't mean that the government as a whole doesn't have a process by which a decision is reached, and that decision isn't the decision that any one individual has control over or can move one direction or the other. It's this weird chaos theory kind of result of all the momentum. And so it's kind of like saying, Fred disagrees with me, or Fred doesn't disagree with me because his neurons actually are what are disagreeing with me. No, the neurons make up the brain. Okay, so we can look at the brain as neurons, or we can look at the brain as this collective thing that produces consciousness, and we interact with it that way. And so I might be getting a little bit philosophical here, but I'm just ranting against all these people that think only individuals exist, and therefore we care about the collective or the government, and we have to pursue anarcho-capitalism directly or something goofy like that. No. You have to admit that the collective exists in order to cap the collective, and then only once it's capped can we then really prioritize and then create a wise government. So there you go.
Okay, well, clearly he's not interested in capping the collective if he doesn't think the collective actually...
No, he actually loves the cap and prioritize idea. He thinks it's a really smart policy. Okay?
Okay.
And so he likes the idea. He just won't admit that it is the... it has any philosophical significance. He won't admit that it pursues social justice. He just views it as a pragmatic way to get the cap, to actually happen. So like we were talking earlier about some other political figures on the right that they only care about the cap. They don't think about step 2, which clearly has to be about fighting about priorities. Because what else can you do after you cap the government other than fight about priorities? You can't. That's all you can do. So if he had a more active approach to thinking about the problem, he'd relax a little bit on his individualism kick. But nope, that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly the buck stops with the individual, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's politics or whether it's anything, whether it's business, whether it's personal life. We are individuals who make our own decisions. However, I mean, it's very clear if you observe mob mentality, if you observe the power of people coming together, it's very clear that the collective works on many different levels, both what we can call positive and what we can call negative.
And on the positive side, I would say, synergy is the positive side of it.
And speaking of that synergy, clearly the individual comes first. I mean, you can imagine one individual existing in the world and no collective, therefore, but you need more than one individual to have a collective. So clearly the individual in concept comes first, but that doesn't mean the collective doesn't exist. That would be
exactly.
But no, go ahead.
Well, have I told you guys my philosopher and the child joke yet?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, real quickly, the difference between a philosopher and a child. If you tell a child to stay out of the river, it'll be a short conversation because both you and the child knows what a river is. But if you tell a philosopher to stay out of the river, it'll be a long conversation because philosophers have not yet agreed what a river is. And that's it. It's that simple. Philosophers, in the search of precision and the pursuit of truth, and what else can they do? They run into these barrier questions, like in terms of defining things, and their problem is that if you try to define a river in a moment in time, it kind of ceases to exist as a river. It's just a collection of water. If you define it as the atoms that are in it, where's the boundary? It's really, really hard. And yet a 2-year-old can know what a river is, and they may or may not respect your wish not to go in there, but they know what a river is. And so we have to, ironically, solve our problems at the level of a 2-year-old instead of the level of a philosopher, because philosophers are just screwing themselves up. That's another rant.
Okay, isn't that a little extreme, though? I mean, even a philosopher can stand on the bank of the river and say, yes, I see where the water is flowing. Water is flowing past us. We have decided as a society to call this a river. I understand. End of conversation.
With most philosophers, they would admit that's what the common people think. And yet, if to actually define the river requires...
The river is where the water flows between the banks of the ground. That's it.
But what about a river that dries up in summer?
Then it's a dry riverbed.
Is it the same river or is it a different river? Can you walk into the same river twice? When you step into a river and then you step out.
It's the same river but different water.
Is it the same river?
Same river, different water.
But philosophers disagree. Philosophers...
No. Yeah. Same river, different water. Same location equals same river. Oh, anyway. We could go on forever.
The landslide happens and the river changes its course. Is it the same river?
It's still a river. It's still, if you say stay out of the river, it's still valid as this is what I stay out of.
Yeah.
regardless of any other argument you can make for it.
Yeah. And speaking of what I stay out of are conversations with philosophers for this very reason.
Well, Rick's a philosopher, though. You have conversations with Rick
He's the mad philosopher. He's different. He's not, and he and I aren't going to argue about what a river is because we got bigger fish to fry.
No,
we'll argue about which fish, but
yeah.
Yeah. Well, like quantum physics, even to get away from philosophy for a second, quantum physics. The study of subatomic particles and the energies. And
we don't know whether the cat's dead or alive until we observe it. I know. I get it.
I wasn't going to talk about that. I was going to say that quantum mechanics cannot describe where a star begins and ends, where the boundary of a star is. To quantum mechanics, it's all just energy fields and probability and so on. But we can look up there and see a star, and we can take a photograph of the sun and say, okay, that's a star, and then there's the boundary more or less, and it's good enough. And
yeah, you have to look at the world on different levels. You can't just.
Yes.
I mean, we understand that this is not solid. It's a bunch of little particles. We get that. There's air in there. We get that. We know that everything is energy. Okay, that's understandable. But from a reality perspective that we have to live in every day, these things around us have defined uses and defined names, and we have to operate within that parameter while we're on this plane. Otherwise, it's time to go. Just saying.
And yet, philosophers disagree.
Okay. All right. Well, okay.
Someone would agree with you.
And how's that working for him?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, every couple hundred years, philosophers have something really important to say. And
okay. Well, listen.
This is one of those years.
This is your time.
Yeah. All right. So we'll listen to you about that, but we're not going to listen to you about the river.
Okay.
All right. I see we're running out of time here rapidly. So anyone listening, check out the Political Fix at politicalfixradio.com. That's our web address, politicalfixradio.com. And if you go there, you can see some past episodes, both the radio show and the video, and you can find out more about the movement, and you can see Rick's TED Talk, and so on and so forth. So, politicalfixradio.com. On behalf of myself, Jay Amernick, and Rick Raddatz, have a fantastic week, and we'll be back with you next week, same time, same channel, on the Political Fix. Are we clear?
Outro ever.
Clear! Clear!
Jeez.
All right.
All right.
Yes. That was fun. Okay.
And, Doug, that's not the flu or vaccination going around. That's actually Ebola. So.
What?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the birth of Ebola. And the government has a conspiracy to hide the truth of that.
Jesus.
I was in the Grover Northwest meeting where we discussed it, and it was all part of the plan. So
we're still live.
Yeah, we're still live on the Hangout, by the way, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
You too, Doug. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Any final thoughts for the Hangout viewers?
Uh,
Oh, wait, I can't hear you.
No, just don't.
There we go.
Yeah, turn the volume. Don't get Ebola. That's all I can tell you.
But Ebola's not here, is it?
Yeah.
Here, in North America.
We have like 13 or so different Ebola quality medical care facilities around the country, and we are purposely bringing back patients with Ebola to the U.S. in order to make sure that our facilities are up to snuff.
Okay.
And
so how do we not get it? How do we prevent from getting it?
Well, the CDC is predicting millions of cases by this time next year. Now that just came out.
Oh, for God's sakes! In the United States?
Well, no, around the world.
Okay.
Mostly in where it's starting from, I'm sure. But
that's the CDC. So aren't they the Center for Disease Control, not the Center for Disease Scaring the bejesus out of you? Can't they do something?
Well, they have an incentive to both be alarmist, but also, realistic.
I don't think they're alarmist. I think they are realistic, actually. I think they.
I think generally, politically, they're almost forced to also be to underreport it in a sense.
Yeah.
Because it can spread fast if it starts spreading. So anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we can use it as a top story next week if there's no other news.
Let's hope there is. That's like horrifying.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that'd be an interesting topic because it gets into the kind of international cooperation and controls that we need, and also the fact that natural law, and the environment, et cetera, is going to do what it wants to do regardless of what we say. So.
Well, we said that like 2 weeks ago. It's not nice to fool with Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Look what happens when you do.
All right.
And actually, we were supposed to talk about. Rick said that he was projecting that Obama wouldn't say what he was going to say during the speech, and
He's going to hand it over to Congress. Well, Congress stepped up and actually voted for it, so it didn't really come to the head that I thought it would.
okay.
Okay.
So his projection was off.
Well, yeah, I would say that Jay had the better prediction there, because Obama was stronger than I thought he'd be, and he still kind of pawned it off to Congress to approve it, but he, I guess he counted his votes first, and he had the votes for it. In the past, he pawned things off like a serial red line to Congress, and then couldn't do anything with it. So, it's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
So the other top story today was about him again, but I just didn't want to. It's like we've kind of hashed that to death.
What was it?
Talking to the UN. And
about climate control or climate change, excuse me.
about ISIS and Russia and all the other conflicts and yeah.
They have a new name for climate change now. Have you heard that new name?
What?
No.
Climate disruption.
Okay. Did you see Jon Stewart's take on it?
No, I did not.
That was funny.
But that's actually interesting. I think that's like climate change. I think is a better title for it, because climate disruption is actually a politicized term, because it's assuming that this isn't supposed to happen. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but we don't know.
Yeah, global warming kind of hit a roadblock when there was a decade of no warming.
And like one of the coldest winters on record.
Yeah, which was actually against all of their models' predictions.
Right.
So they changed it to climate change, but that's not politicized enough. So now we have climate.
But it shouldn't be politicized at all.
What is it? What is it now, Rick? Climate what?
Disruption.
Climate disruption.
Climate disruption.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
When they get the climate Armageddon.
Yeah, exactly. That to me is alarmist, as opposed to when you say to me climate disruption, we're not going to have a rational conversation, because I immediately am going to see you as some tree-hugging lunatic that wants to stop all industry and shut it all down and tell me that my carbon footprint is too big.
But you know what?
As you get back onto your private jet.
This is kind of the green room edition of our show here, but
yeah.
Your carbon footprint is too big.
Perhaps.
You know this because you live in Las Vegas, a desert, and yet you have drinking water. So
yeah, it's delicious.
Somehow you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. So.
But they call it climate change, and then.
Like, they're going to call it disruption, and yet a lot of the people on the political panel don't even think that there is any climate change whatsoever. So how would they go so far as to say, okay, it's actually disruption?
Well, here's the big challenge for both sides, okay? We can all imagine some future Earth, hundreds of years in the future, where humanity has... Now, instead of 7 billion people, we have 70 billion people.
Oh, God.
We predict that we'll max out at 9 for some reason, but let's say that prediction is wrong. It just keeps on going up. Now, 70 billion people, consuming as fast as Americans do, I say kaboom, we hit a wall, things die.
Okay, however, have you seen where they say that if you take all the people in the world, you can put them in Florida with like plenty of space to stand there, and they all fit within the tip of Florida.
Yeah, but you can't live like that, though.
I know, but that puts in perspective how many people are actually on this Earth.
Yeah.
No, it's space-wise.
I think it's all Mexico City.
What?
If you look at how much land can be farmed, we're using a lot of it.
Yeah, You can't farm in the Arctic. You can't farm.
And the crops are becoming more and more homogenized. So then you imagine one or two crop disasters because of whatever, and there's not enough gene variety for them to kind of evolve naturally. Stuff can happen. I don't know. So here's the deal. I agree with the environmentalists over the long term. Over the long term here, we are all just ants on a dung ball. Eventually, we eat the dung ball, and then we're hurting. So I agree in the long term. In any one short-term issue, I don't know. And as a conservative, traditionally, I believe we should take a conservative approach, meaning we should err on the side of sustainability in this case. I'm a fiscal conservative and also an environmental conservative. I think it's the same question. We are economizing resources, collective resources versus environmental resources. So I feel for the left. I think they are being alarmist, but to ignore the problem like the right does too, I think is wrong. But we can't solve the problem now. We have to solve our own fiscal sustainability first. Then maybe we can learn about environmental sustainability.
Right. Yeah. And what we can actually do about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're telling me that my footprint's too big because I drink water, I'm going to be like, you find another way to hydrate me.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that would be part of the capital prioritize that my body needs water.
Yeah.
Actually, on a slightly different note, when should we start sort of promoting the show so we can get some feedback on it from like friends and family as to what works, what doesn't work?
That's a great question.
We've been going since May, June, July. We've been going for 4 months, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're probably ready.
Just to get some feedback, something, just to see if we're on the right track, if we're on the wrong track, what's going on.
Well, let's see. If it's just to get feedback, that's trivial. I can email my list, and we'll get 20 to 100 listeners that day, and we'll have a start. If it's because we think we're ready,
I'd like to get some feedback.
I guess the market will tell us that.
Well, no, I'd like to get some actual
feedback. Anyone watching,
first.
send feedback.
So,
if you're watching this, please send feedback.
We want the honest feedback, so we can retool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Right?
Let's stop the broadcast, and then we can talk about a couple ideas that we might not necessarily want publicized.
Okay.
All right. So we're signing out on the Hangout. See you next week.
Goodbye,
guys.
Hangout.
Thanks for watching.